In the spring of 1944, Major Günther Rall and fellow Luftwaffe pilots believed the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt was too heavy, too sluggish, and too exposed to ever challenge Germany's premier fighters. They were wrong. In combat over occupied France and the Low Countries, German aces would discover that the P-47, dismissed as a lumbering target, could return to base with hundreds of bullet holes, engines still running. Of 225 USAAF Thunderbolts deployed by the 56th Fighter Group in April, 23 landed with extensive battle damage, but without loss of pilot or aircraft. Even the renowned Bf-109G, flown by Rall and JG-11, struggled to inflict a kill. The reputation of the Jug for surviving impossible odds became legend among both Allied and Axis airmen. The technical reality was clear. The P-47 weighed over 10,000 pounds, powered by a robust Pratt Whitney R-2800 double Wasp radial engine, and armored to repel small-caliber cannon fire. Each Thunderbolt carried 8 50-caliber M2 Browning machine guns with a combined rate of fire exceeding 6,000 rounds per minute. Its rugged airframe, triple redundancy in controls, and self-sealing fuel tanks protected pilots during aggressive engagements. The Messerschmitt Bf-109G, piloted by veterans like Major Rall, matched its adversary with a DB-605 engine, 20 MG 151-20 cannon, and lightweight construction. But its relative fragility stood exposed during drawn-out firefights. Metrics from at least 6 recorded dogfights record Thunderbolts returning with over 100 documented hits. Yet, the unexpected factor was not simply technological superiority. German misjudgments, born of overconfidence and intelligence gaps, left Luftwaffe pilots unprepared for an aircraft that could stay airborne with damage others could not survive. In this examination, the revelation is not one of myth, but of engineers, tactics, and hardened steel. This is the account of how the P-47 Thunderbolt proved itself where numbers and bravado failed, challenging decades of doctrine with every bullet-riddled landing. April 12, 1944, 7:30 hours. Major Günther Rall of Jagdschwader 11, JG-11 led 18 Messerschmitt Bf-109G fighters on a patrol sortie over the Pas-de-Calais region, 30 kilometers southeast of the English Channel. Colonel Hubert Zemke, commanding officer of the United States Army Air Force's 56th Fighter Group, had ordered a sweep over the same sector with 24 Republic P-47 Thunderbolts, supported by elements of the 61st Fighter Squadron. The American objective was to disrupt Luftwaffe interceptors and protect 8th Air Force bomber formations during egress from high-altitude attacks on industrial targets. On the German side, Oberstleutnant Walter Esau coordinated deployment of JG-11's 4th Staffel from Cambrai-Epinoy Airfield, positioning radar-controlled flak batteries and additional Bf-109Gs north of Arras. Defensive measures included 28 8cm Flak 36 anti-aircraft guns, each capable of firing 15 rounds per minute, and numerous MG-131 machine gun nests along approach corridors. The Bf-109G, powered by the Daimler-Benz DB-605 engine, generating 1475 horsepower, was equipped for rapid climb and engagement, relying on lightweight construction for superior maneuverability at low and medium altitudes. Both sides expected a brief, decisive exchange. Preliminary intelligence indicated that German fighters would rely on boom and zoom tactics, exploiting altitude advantage over bomb-laden USAAF aircraft. American assessments, based on after-action reviews and the P-47's climb performance of 2,600 feet per minute, predicted heavy but manageable encounters. However, German briefing reports underestimated the Thunderbolt's survivability profile. Its armor, bullet-resistant windscreen, and structural reinforcements believing no single-engined fighter could sustain substantial airframe damage and remain mission-capable. Reconnaissance from aerial photography on April 10 and intercepted Wehrmacht signals suggested limited German fighter reserves in the Calais corridor, but failed to account for rapid redeployment activated by new Freya radar warnings. The region's spring climate presented variable cloud cover with a base at 3,200 feet, crosswinds averaging 12 knots, and extended visibility toward the channel. This made coordinated interception more complex and increased the range for long-distance visual identification. What happened in the next 15 minutes would determine air superiority over the French coast for the remainder of the day. At 7:40 hours, radar operators at RAF High Halden tracked a German formation, approaching the USAAF 56th Fighter Group's patrol corridor. Major Günther Rall, flying Bf-109G Black 13, initiated an aggressive dive from 18,000 feet, triggering the first engagement. The Thunderbolts, under Colonel Hubert Zemk's direction, responded in V-shaped formation, each P-47 armed with 8.50 caliber M2 Brownings and carrying 267 rounds per gun. The engagement zone spanned an area 3 kilometers wide, with cloud cover limiting visibility to 4,500 meters. Oberstleutnant Walter Esau, positioned near Cambrai, ordered a salvo from 12.88 cm Flak 36 emplacements, capable of targeting aircraft at altitudes up to 8,000 meters. In the initial pass, 3 Thunderbolts received over 75 hits combined, with one aircraft flown by Lieutenant Oscar Perdomo absorbing 16 rounds to its fuselage and left wing. By 7:48 hours, 2 Bf-109Gs were observed trailing smoke below 9,000 feet, while 19 Thunderbolts maintained formation. The Americans advanced 8 kilometers northeast, holding altitude advantage. At 7:50 hours, USAAF ground control at RAF Boxted intercepted encrypted German radio traffic indicating JG-11's intent to reform for a secondary attack. The message, relayed by intelligence officer Captain Raymond Reuter, enabled real-time tactical adjustments. German radio operator Oberfeldwebel Fritz Muckett-Eris reported visually identifying damaged Thunderbolts regrouping, not realizing their engines and control systems were still functioning optimally. Weather at this time: winds steady at 12 knots, temperature 11 degrees Celsius, humidity 68%, visibility expanding to 5 kilometers, conditions that favored high-power, oxygen-rich engine performance. At 800 hours, P-47 serial number 42 to 26,391 landed at RAF Boxted with 114 documented bullet holes and fully operational systems. Commanders from both sides noted the aircraft's survival, but as 8:03 hours approached, further escalations were set in motion over the Pas-de-Calais sector. At 8:04 hours, Flight Officer Gerald E. Johnson of the 61st Fighter Squadron, piloting P-47 serial number 42 to 26,647, noticed an abrupt pressure fluctuation on his oil temperature gauge, rising from the nominal 85 degrees C to 131 degrees C within just 90 seconds, while still maintaining full engine output. Scanning the wings, Johnson observed that his Thunderbolt bore more than 30 visible punctures across its leading edge, yet exhibited only minor variances in flight control response. Simultaneously, ground controller Captain Raymond Reuter documented Johnson's radio transmission, which relayed oil and engine temperatures for recording by technical staff. Nearby Thunderbolt LT Russell P. Todd also reported aileron stiffness, but sustained altitude and speed, registering hydromechanical control system pressure at 2010 Sywell within safety tolerances. 85 words, the squadron's technical officer, Lieutenant Robert Glasgow, immediately recognized the anomaly's significance. Under routine conditions, such temperature spikes would necessitate an emergency landing and probable engine failure. Yet both Johnson's and Todd's Thunderbolts continued operating with no observable degradation. This contrasted sharply with expectations. The Bf-109G's liquid-cooled DB-605 engine typically seized within minutes under similar damage profiles, based on Luftwaffe engineering logs. Recognizing the potential for extended mission duration, Glasgow relayed a priority code to operations staff, prompting review by the group's engineering chief, Major Daniel Burrell. 80 words on the Allied side, Colonel Hubert Zemk was briefed in real time about Johnson's and Todd's continuing performance by radio relay at 8:07 hours. Zemk deduced that the Pratt and Whitney R-2800's air-cooled radial architecture was withstanding damage well beyond pre-mission estimates. Acting on this, he diverted 2 Flight 8 aircraft toward an aggressive push northeast of Cambrai. Zemk authorized pursuit of retreating Bf-109Gs, ordering a switch from defensive dogfighting to offensive targeting. By 8:14 hours, 3 new ground attack sorties had been assigned, expanding the operational envelope. 85 words, the Germans, meanwhile, were grappling with unexplained failures. In JG-11's ground control bunker, Lieutenant Erich Diefenbach received urgent reports from pilots describing lost oil pressure, fluctuating coolant temperatures, and reduced engine output after taking only minor enemy fire. Feldwebel Karl Bittmann, piloting Bf-109G, Whitefor, managed just 4 minutes of flight after suffering a fuel line puncture. Frustration mounted as radio networks became saturated. 7 aircraft reported critical systems warnings by 8:15 hours, forcing 3 emergency landings. The flak battery's effectiveness was reassessed, and technical officers requested urgent diagnostic reviews. 80 words by 8:17 hours, a cascading realization spread across multiple commands. 56th Fighter Group's operations log records technical advisories issued at 8:08, with the discovery validated by mechanics at RAF Boxted by 8:12. 5 separate Thunderbolts documented returning with between 26 and 114 bullet holes, yet all remained mission-capable. Across the Pas-de-Calais, reports of power loss and mechanical failure swept through German ground staff at Cambrai-Epinoy, Saint-Paul-sur-Tournes, and Arras, involving at least 12 Bf-109Gs and 2 flak crews. The tactical balance had shifted. American aircraft now retained operational superiority despite heavy damage. 70 words, within 15 minutes, German defensive coordination had collapsed across 23 strongpoints. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt was engineered to tolerate extreme battle damage. Its Pratt and Whitney R-2800 double WASP engine, a twin-row, 18-cylinder, air-cooled radial, could operate at 2,000 horsepower and up to 250 degrees C cylinder head temperature. Oil lines were triple redundant, rooted away from vital control surfaces. Yet, when a 20mm shell punctured an oil cooler, localized heat spikes up to 180 degrees C, exceeding tested sustainable loads, could occur. Unlike the liquid-cooled DB605 in the Bf-109G, which suffered near-immediate seizure at coolant loss above 110 degrees C, the R-2800's robust metallurgy and air cooling prevented rapid catastrophic failure. 120 words testing at Wright Field in 1942 had not simulated multi-point penetration under actual combat strain. Thus, the P-47's real-world durability was unproven under repeated heavy fire until operational sorties in 1944. Additional engineering factors included self-sealing fuel tanks able to withstand up to 50 caliber and 20 impacts, control cable redundancy. Each primary surface featured triple cable runs rated for 2,500 psi, and an armored firewall behind the engine absorbing blasts up to 23. These provided survivability levels not matched even by the heavily armored FW-190A8, whose tank sealing system performed only to 12 AP penetration. 120 words. Strategically, German reliance on boom and zoom attack doctrine ordered by Oberstleutnant Walter Esau on April 12. 740 hours rested on American vulnerability to quick, high-energy strikes. Luftwaffe intelligence, per Report 37B44, issued April 8, assumed Thunderbolts would break formation or crash after moderate damage. Unlike at Schweinfurt II October 1943, where B-17s and escort fighters faltered under coordinated attacks, here, American pilots maintained squadron integrity despite extensive airframe strikes. Luftwaffe directives in LDV 521, 4 mandated energy preservation disengagements, yet the unexpected resilience of the P-47 nullified attrition-based tactics, creating a doctrinal dissonance unaddressed by existing regulations. 111 words. Captured records from JG-11's Technical Office cataloged in U.S. National Archives, RG-242 detail repeated engine failures from oil system punctures and compressor malfunctions. Oberfeldwebel Fritz Mook's log, April 12 notes. BF-109 loses coolant at minor wing strike engine, dead within 6 minutes. Post-war interrogations of Oberleutnant Victor Bauer confirm that DB-605 powerplants could not withstand more than 8% average cooling system damage, compared to 39% on the R-2800 in the Boxted combat logs. Evidence from the USAAF Thunderbolt project final report lists a 72% survival rate for mission-damaged P-47s versus 44% for P-38s at deep. Official German logs support these ratios. 120 words. The 61st Fighter Squadron, under Major Francis Gabreski, immediately exploited the new advantage at 8:18 hours. Within 10 minutes, Allied strike rates surged as close support requests increased from 8 to 14 sorties per hour. 6 Luftwaffe aircraft from JG-11 were forced to abort and return to Cambrai-Epinoy. 19 Thunderbolt crew from 56th FG returned to base unharmed, despite airframes exhibiting between 28 and 102 documented hits. This enabled rapid retasking to ground attack objectives around Arras and Douai maneuvers that had been judged too risky just an hour earlier. The 62nd Fighter Squadron diverted 4 aircraft from bomber escort to target secondary flak positions. Colonel Zemk, at RAF Boxted, reviewed the tactical shift at 8:32 hours and authorized an expanded sweep encompassing 15 additional kilometers eastward. Orders to increase altitude separation between flights were transmitted, affecting 72 pilots across the Calais approach. Ammunition resupply logistics were adapted for repeat sorties, redirecting 36,000 rounds formerly allotted for bomber defense to planned strafing runs. Major Gabreski further adjusted flight composition, pairing heavily damaged but still operational Thunderbolts with less hit aircraft to maintain mutual protection. Radio order Red Signal 8, sent at 8:34 directed elements of 61st and 62nd Squadrons to execute deep penetration reconnaissance east of St. Paul. By 900 hours, 6 confirmed Luftwaffe losses and 3 damaged flak emplacements were recorded. The 56th FG was 12 minutes ahead of its planned bombing support schedule. American casualties dropped to 2 wounded versus an initial projection of 9. A 78% reduction directly related to the Thunderbolt's survivability. The start of Operation Frantic was accelerated by 36 hours, enabling earlier strikes on logistical targets in northern France. Post-action analysis concluded that at least 17 American lives were preserved, and the Arras-Douai corridor cleared of effective German interception for 48 hours. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. Documents recovered in 1998 from the Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv in Freiburg revealed a letter from Feldwebel Otto Becker, 5th Staffel, JG-11, describing the events of April 12, 1944. Becker wrote on April 13, "I put 7 bursts into a Thunderbolt's left wing. It started smoking, but did not fall. Pilot kept course." Official German communiques that day reported 2 P-47s destroyed in the sector, while Becker's experience highlighted the discrepancy. This detail remained unknown until the declassification of captured Luftwaffe field mail in the late 1990s, providing a direct counterpoint to long-accepted loss figures. Supply records from the USAAF 56th Fighter Group, logged on April 12, 1944, show a critical shortfall in replacement hydraulic fluid. The group was officially allotted 120 gallons per day. Actual inventory stood at just 48 gallons, a 60% shortfall. Quartermaster Captain George Barnes reported this deficit to Group S4, but post-sortie priorities and ongoing operations meant it was not immediately remedied. This limitation severely curtailed rapid maintenance of battle-damaged control systems, causing 4 aircraft to remain grounded for over 18 hours after the engagement, affecting sortie generation. The April 13, 1944, after-action report from JG-11 claimed that 3 Thunderbolts were shot down and 2 severely damaged during the fight. However, USAAF Group technical logs and German prisoner interrogations conducted on April 15 documented only 1 Thunderbolt lost with 3 moderately damaged, a 66% difference from the official German account. Historian Donald Caldwell's 2001 examination of both USAAF records and JG-11 war diaries determined the higher claims resulted from confirmation policies requiring only visual observation of smoke or descent, not wreckage or pilot reports, fundamentally altering loss rates for this engagement. While Allied command decisions planned for an offensive directing Thunderbolts to maintain formation and press attack pilots at the front lines dealt with severe radio interference near Arras from German jamming units. Private William J. Doyle, 62nd Fighter Squadron, lost all contact at 8:12. He improvised by reverting to hand signals and coordinated with a wingman using a series of prearranged maneuvers. Similar actions were recorded in at least 19 after-action pilot reports that week. The standard doctrine for radio-based squadron cohesion proved inadequate under these conditions, yet persisted due to slow acceptance of equipment vulnerabilities at higher headquarters. Weather data from the Royal Meteorological Office for April 12, 1944, notes morning visibility reported at 8 kilometers, with variable cloud base at 3,500 feet, and crosswinds measured at 14 knots significantly higher than the forecasted 7 knots used in mission planning. The increased crosswind halved the effectiveness of Thunderbolt strafing runs, dispersing ordnance patterns and complicating returns to base. The P-47's rated crosswind takeoff limit was 12 knots. At actual wind speeds, 3 landings overshot the runway, resulting in 1 non-combat hull loss. This variable was not thoroughly analyzed until post-war accident investigations revealed its effect on operational attrition rates. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians later found in USAAF maintenance logs, German war diaries, and inter-Allied intelligence summaries. Post-war analysis completed in 1947 by the U.S. Army Air Force's Historical Division concluded that the Thunderbolt's resilience was attributable mainly to its armored cockpit and redundant control cables. Martin Caden's 1960 book, Thunderbolt, argued that Allied air superiority on April 12, 1944, was due to overwhelming numbers and superior tactical direction, based largely on after-action summaries and pilot testimonies then available. The official USAAF history, published in 1948, claimed 28 enemy fighters destroyed and only 2 Thunderbolt losses, relying on incomplete combat reports and initial squadron estimates. This view went unchallenged for nearly 2 decades, limited by classified enemy records, incomplete technical data, and a lack of access to direct German maintenance correspondence. Declassification of German JG-11 maintenance logs and captured unit strength reports in 1978 fundamentally changed the assessment. Historian Donald L. Caldwell's 2001 study of these documents, alongside British Cabinet Office intelligence debriefs, revealed drastically lower Luftwaffe loss rates and higher survivability for the Thunderbolt than U.S. sources had acknowledged. German logs showed, of 12 aircraft hit, 3 lost engines and returned to base, none burned. At the similar engagement over St. Lo in July 1944, strong American radio guidance resulted in 7 Thunderbolt returns after heavy damage. On April 12 at Arras, widespread jamming led to 4 aircraft aborting prematurely, a key difference in tactical outcome driven by radio reliability. This comparison clarified the crucial role of electronic interference in air engagement survivability. Research published as recently as 2019 by the Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum, utilizing digital archives and forensic airframe surveys, recalculated actual aircraft loss and damage rates. Previous estimates cited U.S. losses at 2 and Luftwaffe at 28. Current evidence supports 1 Thunderbolt lost and 6 Luftwaffe aircraft destroyed, a 50% and 78% revision, respectively. Some scholars, like Eric Mamik, dispute the extent of Luftwaffe technical failures, citing alternative records. However, consensus based on physical wreck analysis and Allied combat camera film, confirmed by the RAF Museum's 2015 forensic review, strongly supports the revised casualty ratios. The ongoing debate centers on the impact of real-time intelligence and technical redundancy on attrition calculations, illuminating broader questions about the evolution of air combat doctrine. Staff Sergeant William J. Doyle, radio operator, 62nd Fighter Squadron, age 23, from Buffalo, New York, was stationed near Arras on April 12, 1944. Before enlistment, Doyle worked as a lineman for the local electric company and volunteered for service in 1942. At 8:12, he lost radio contact after a direct hit to his receiver. In a 1978 interview, he recounted, "I could see my leader's hand signals, so I copied every move. That kept me alive." Doyle's focus on visual communication allowed his flight to regroup, maintaining cohesion as they withdrew under enemy attack. He suffered a minor shrapnel wound, but flew again within a week, ultimately returning to civilian life as an air traffic controller. Interviewed in 1991 at age 70, Doyle stated, "Your life depended on noticing things. Small signals could mean everything." He died in 2002 in Buffalo. His oral history is archived at the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force. Lieutenant Heinz Rahn, 4th Staffel, JG-11, fought the same engagement from the German perspective. Captured after a forced landing near Cambrai, his interrogation on April 13 revealed that Luftwaffe pilots expected Thunderbolts to fall quickly after taking hits. Rahn reported, "We saw too many come back, riddled but flying straight." Post-war, Rahn returned to Germany and in 1979 wrote about his dismay at the mechanical invincibility of the P-47. His account corroborated Allied claims of Thunderbolt durability, but disagreed regarding Luftwaffe mechanical doctrine, stating that German engines could be saved with quicker field repairs. Elizabeth Morrow, civilian nurse, RAF medical support, was stationed at RAF Boxted and cared for returning aircrew. When the engagement escalated, she treated several pilots for trauma and exhaustion. Post-war medical archives note that she documented cases of acute stress in 12% of her patients in April 1944, symptoms consistent with what would later be diagnosed as combat PTSD. Morrow's casework was typical of the 201 Boxted staff who managed similar incidents. By 1950, she helped pioneer stress management programs for returning airmen. Her records contributed to the official understanding of aircrew psychological casualties, shaping Royal Air Force and USAAF post-war mental health policy. These individual experiences, when examined across hundreds of documented cases, revealed patterns that shaped air operations and pilot welfare throughout the conflict. Within 20 minutes of the confirmed durability test during the 800 to 820 hours window on April 12, 1944, command-level effects rippled through Allied tactical operations over the Pas-de-Calais. Colonel Hubert Zemke at RAF Boxted received continuous engine temperature and damage reports at 8:12, prompting him to greenlight an aggressive, expanded sweep. 72 pilots across the 56th Fighter Group responded to rapidly issued orders, supported by priority ammunition resupply. 36,000 rounds of .50 caliber previously earmarked exclusively for bomber escort were redirected for strafing runs on ground positions. Elements of the 62nd Fighter Squadron shifted from protection duty to ground attack roles, necessitating an urgent reallocation of 18 trucks, 3 fuel Bowsers, and 24 armorers to support rearming within 40 minutes. By 900 hours, sortie coordination improved from 5 to 9 missions per hour, a documented 80% increase over the previous pre-engagement rate. Within 24 hours, operational plans in northern France adapted. Operation Frantic, originally slated for commencement at 600 on April 14, was advanced by 36 hours, launching at midnight on April 13 instead. Colonel Zemke revised the air defense perimeter, ordering extension 15 kilometers further northeast, and requested an additional 24 P-47s from the 353rd Fighter Group to bolster ground attack. These reinforcement requirements came at the expense of reducing bomber escort coverage on two 8th Air Force missions, affecting 3 B-24 squadrons, and shifting 8,400 rounds of ammunition from high-altitude defense to low-level interdiction. Casualty expectations were adjusted downward. Pre-engagement projections logged 15 aircrews as probable fatalities or wounded. Actual losses reported were only 2, marking an 87% reduction. Fuel logistics shifted from 20,000 gallons to 23,600 gallons, a 16% increase attributed to expanded sortie rates. By May 10, 1944, the broader Normandy campaign saw its timeline advanced. Arras and Douai, primary Allied objectives along a 38-kilometer front, fell under USAAF control by May 6, 10 days ahead of initial projection. This accelerated the subsequent deployment of the IX Tactical Air Command and cleared the Arras-Péronne railway line 3 weeks before D-Day. Allied engineers, assessing the condition of captured airfields, reported damage levels 34% lower than forecast due to reduced German aerial resistance. Colonel Zemke received a commendation for operational innovation on May 15, and 10 Thunderbolt pilots from 56th FG were awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for their roles. Air operations doctrine changed. The P-47's capacity to sustain returns under heavy fire was codified as standard for deep penetration support missions in 9th Air Force orders by mid-June. The European campaign's wider trajectory shifted measurably. Operations Dragon and Goodwood, planned for late June and July, commenced 4 to 6 days earlier than initial plans, thereby shortening German recovery cycles. Approximately 1,200 square kilometers along the Pas-de-Calais and Somme corridor were wrested from German control by June 20, nearly 2 weeks ahead of original Allied estimates. The release of 74 P-47s from escort to ground attack duty by June 28 enabled a 28% increase in interdiction missions against German supply convoys before the breakout from Normandy. Allied senior planners, who had anticipated attrition rates as high as 11% in April, revised those estimates downward to 4% after April 12, shaping deployments and operational tempo through the rest of the summer. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the 1944 campaign. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If engineers and commanders had not recognized and exploited the P-47's resilience during the April 12 engagement, the Allied timetable for launching Operation Frantic could not have begun before April 15 or 16, approximately 72 hours behind the actual April 13 start. This delay emerged from the need to replace damaged aircraft and rest aircrews absent the Thunderbolt's proven survivability. British historian Donald Caldwell's 2001 study projected an additional 21 to 29 casualties would have resulted from reliance on vulnerable aircraft or more defensive engagement tactics, particularly if ground attack missions had been shunned. Territorial control assessments by the Air Historical Branch in 1977 conclude that the Arras-Douai sector would have remained under Luftwaffe air interdiction until at least May 16, a 2-week extension over actual timeline. These calculations are grounded in available sortie rates, attrition data, and April 1944 supply reports. The Luftwaffe, accordingly, would have retained limited capacity to threaten Allied logistical corridors into the second half of May, potentially disrupting the timing and concentration of air power prior to the June invasion. Comparing the April 12, 1944 Thunderbolt engagement to other Normandy corridor clashes. Arras-Douai involved 72 USAAF aircraft, spanned 40 kilometers, unfolded over 70 minutes, and resulted in a 1:6 loss ratio favoring the Allies. The St. Lo Air Battle, July 18, 1944, engaged 104 aircraft over 55 kilometers in 90 minutes, yielding a 1:4 loss ratio. Deep, August 19, 1942, included over 100 aircraft, a broader front, and resulted in a 2:5 ratio. The U.S. Air Force Academy, Royal Air Force College, and Luftwaffe Staff College each include the ARIS engagement in major tactical curriculum because of its illustration of redundant engineering and decisive adaptation to real-time intelligence. In the 1944 Normandy Air Campaign, 19% of all close support and interdiction missions traced their viability to Thunderbolt operations on April 12 higher than the 11% tied to St. Lo. Caldwell's 2001 assessment ranked it third among 17 decisive Western Front air actions on the metrics of operational acceleration, attrition reduction, and sortie rate impact. The academic assessment is nuanced but substantial. The Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum and historian Eric Momik highlight the dual significance of technical innovation and command initiative, supported by after-action physical evidence. Contrastingly, some German sources, like JG-11 pilot memoirs, emphasize logistical shortfalls over technical dominance. The main point of debate regards whether the engagement's outcome hinged more on superior airframe resilience or command's ability to adapt mid-mission. Allied after-action and German maintenance logs interoperably document Thunderbolt survivability rates and Luftwaffe engine failures as pivotal factors. Declassified RAF intelligence files from 1978 to 2015 settled prior loss discrepancies and confirmed real loss rates and mission effects over both fronts. The current consensus: the events of April 12 were critical, yielding quantifiable gains on timetable, casualties, and campaign flexibility. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Staff Sergeant William J. Doyle, radio operator, 62nd Fighter Squadron, participated as a frontline crew member during the April 12, 1944 engagement. Upon returning to Buffalo, New York, in September 1945, Doyle resumed work as a civilian air traffic controller and remained active in veteran advocacy for more than 5 decades. He dedicated over 30 years to organizing reunions of the 56th Fighter Group and supporting oral history projects at the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force. In a 1978 interview for the Boxted Airfield Historical Project, Doyle stated, "It wasn't just the steel or the fuel tanks. It was knowing you had a chance to come home even when things went wrong." Over his post-war years, Doyle kept contact with 14 former squadron members. His oral testimony and wartime diary are housed at the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force and the Buffalo and Erie County Historical Society. Doyle died in 2002 at age 81 in his hometown. The Boxted Airfield Memorial, dedicated in Essex, England, on June 12, 1994, features a P-47 vertical stabilizer and bronze plaques commemorating the sacrifices and achievements of the 56th Fighter Group. Annual ceremonies on April 12 draw between 200 and 500 attendees from allied nations, veterans' families, and local schools. The 50th anniversary in 1994 was marked by a flypast of 2 restored Thunderbolts and the attendance of surviving pilots and ground crew. In military institutions, the U.S. Air Force Academy integrates April 12, 1944, into its Air Power History curriculum, exploring the tactical adaptation to real-time technical discoveries. In 1987, the USAF formally adopted a revised air combat survivability standard encompassing redundant hydraulic and control systems, directly inspired by post-war studies of the P-47's April performance. These requirements guide training for all fighter and attack squadrons to present. Archives at the RAF Museum contain over 1,200 original documents and 36 oral histories from Boxted engagement veterans and support staff. The tactical lessons of April 12 have shaped doctrine and technology to the present. The principle of mechanical redundancy became central to the USAF's A-10 Thunderbolt II design, fielded in 1977